Hail Reckoners and welcome back to the top 10 games of 2015. These are games that are complete, that you can spend money for on Steam. I think all of them are on Steam. And play them. Unlike the last video, which was things to look forward to, these are games that are out and you can go and enjoy now. So without further ado, let's go! Number 10. Tales from the Borderlands. There were two Telltale games that came out this year, Borderlands and Game of Thrones. Those aren't their names, obviously, this is the genres, but you know the games I'm talking about. Borderlands easily takes the cake and makes this list because it did a really good job of holding on to what makes the Borderlands franchise fairly unique. Each episode had a pretty cool song associated with it of the same kind of genre that other past Borderlands games have used. It had a very similar sense of comedy, had, a light sprinkling of those kind of fourth wall jokes where it messes with the UI a little bit. But I think the most important factors are twofold. One, the story was actually good. Like, this was a pretty cool installment into the Borderlands franchise. They kind of fleshed things out a little bit. It's cool just to see a little bit more of, like, Hyperion and how the world worked and that kind of thing. There's character building for the couple of characters that weren't unique to that game. And back again on that comedy thing, like, Episode 4 has one of the funniest, most fun things I think I did this year. And it's a QTE, but holy crap, like, it's just so good. Like, I don't want to spoil it for you guys. Play it for yourselves. I think if you've never played the Borderlands franchise, I think you could play this game and still enjoy it. There are definitely a few things, more than one thing, that wouldn't resonate with you as well, because you wouldn't know certain things. I'm tap dancing around a pretty big spoiler. Let's just say characters are involved that you wouldn't really appreciate necessarily unless you played the previous games. And definitely don't play Tales from Borderlands if you intend to play Borderlands afterwards. Because it would definitely, I think, spoil Borderlands 2 for you a little bit. You can play 1 whenever you want. I don't think 2 spoils 1. The order's not that important, really. But anyway, yeah, so Tales from Borderlands, number 10 game, better than Game of Thrones by a long shot. Number 9, Blood Bowl 2. This is actually my first entrance into the Blood Bowl franchise. I mean, it's only Blood Bowl 1, so I missed out on Blood Bowl 1. I've never played Blood Bowl 1, but Blood Bowl 2 is quite awesome. It took a little while to grow on me, in the way the game played mechanically, because at first glance, the first couple of experiences I had with it were they gave me an incorrect impression, that the game was too random number intensive. And the game definitely is quite random number intensive, but that's kind of where the strategy is almost not responding to your opponent well. It is that, but it's more random number mitigation. And that definitely, it sounds like a bad thing, and it kind of is. Like, I mean, just because it's not as RNG heavy as I first thought it was, that doesn't mean it's still not maybe too RNG heavy. The reason I like it, though, is I think it does a really good job of capturing Warhammer. I'm a huge Warhammer Fantasy fan, and I think they did a really good job of making the different races play uniquely while being reasonably balanced. There's definitely, if you look on the community forums, there's definitely a lot of talk about certain races statistically, winning a lot more games, and that's probably true. I don't expect them to balance. Like, Warhammer the board game is absolutely not balanced race to race. So I think this game has all the flaws the board game has, which is why I can swallow them a little easier. And I have fun with it. I was in that Blood Bowl 2 league, which was fun to play with other YouTubers. A couple of them took it a bit more seriously than I would have liked. I think especially with a game where RNG is such a big thing, it's not well suited for being competitive. Definitely a good game if you like tactics, I really like how you feel like you're managing a team. I don't play sports games that much, and so this game gets me to like a sports game. So, good job, Blood Bowl 2. I look forward to seeing the Extra Races DLC that you have promised us for 2016. Number 8, Child of Light. This is this is one of 2 games on this list that technically actually came out in 2014, but this is the list of games I played in 2015. So Child of Light is an RPG, and it has not quite turn-based combat, but does that thing where each of the characters has like a bar, and when it's full, then you can take your action. And I think that added a really cool layer to the combat, because you're trying to like hold off on like this character's bar is full, but you're saving it so you can hit the bad guys at the right time to interrupt a move and that kind of thing. And that added a whole extra layer, that timing system, which I really, really liked, and made combat a lot more engaging. Because for the most part, combat was really straightforward and easy. It's kind of like you had really strong heals in the game, so none of the combat was ever hard. It was just managing hit, heal kind of stuff. But that timing thing made it not as tedious. On top of that, it looked great. Like, the art was amazing, the sound was cool, and the cast of characters was really cool. Like, you have a pretty big suite of guys to choose from, and you can choose 3 to be in your combat little bailiwick. And am I remembering correctly? I believe they all get experience whether or not they compete, so that was really nice, because it let you swap guys in and out kind of at your leisure. Other games, you have to it's like, I want to choose this guy, better go grind with him for a while. That wasn't a problem here, if I'm remembering correctly. The level up system was, it was fine. It was very boring. It's 3 linear things, so there's not really any branching, which makes it boring, but it wasn't terrible. It's cool. You get to choose one to go through. You level up really fast, so you get to choose. You don't even have to choose really. By the end of the game, you're in at least 2, maybe even 3 of them. But to kind of supplement that in an adequate way, that whole crystal crafting system, I thought that was really well done. It has enough experimentation to keep it interesting, and the payoff is very high, because you can craft some really cool crystals, and it's fairly intuitive actually. Like, you're trying different crystal combinations, and it's great. They give you enough raw resources to mess around with that you don't feel like you're wasting a finite resource. So, very cool. Great story. I very, very rarely do I beat an RPG and immediately play through it a second time. And that's what I did here. So I think that speaks volumes. Just a great overall RPG experience that also wasn't too friggin' long. It stayed for a very appropriate amount of time. Like, if it had been longer, it might have gotten old. If it had been shorter, it would have been almost, it would have been too short. So, just a very well-crafted game. Also, I relearned recently, not an indie game. It's like a Microsoft game, I think. So, AAA companies are learning how to make that indie feel, which isn't a bad thing. I love good games existing. It's just weird to think that it's not an indie game. Number 7. The Curious Expedition is on this list the most tenuously of any of the games, because I believe it still bears the early access tag, so there's still a little bit of development going on. So this game might be better suited to being in the first list of the 10 demos that I'm looking forward to seeing in 2016, but it's on this list because it's mostly done. Most of the development that I'm seeing still going on in the Curious Expedition is aesthetics. They're kind of just redoing graphic art type stuff. The core gameplay is there, and I don't expect that to be changing significantly. I could be wrong, but as this game stands, if they didn't change anything more with this game, I would be totally okay with that. It's a great game. It's a hard game. It's kind of like FTL hard, where I haven't actually beaten it yet, but I still have a really fun time playing it. So it's a roguelike game where you are a freaking like Victorian era British explorer, like your Alec Quatermain type guy. So you go into different countries, different parts of the world, and your goal is to find the hidden temple and bring back treasure, and you're competing against some NPCs to accrue the most points. I mean, at my skill level, I don't give a crap about points. I'm just trying to do it, because I usually perish in the 4th or 5th expedition, and one game, quote-unquote, is 6 expeditions. but I really like just kind of, it's a game about exploration that makes you feel like you're exploring really well. It's a very tricky thing in games, I think, to make exploration fun while still having the element of resource management, because for me, I'm just slightly obsessive enough that I can spend too much time obsessing about my resource levels, and that can just completely occlude any joy of exploration. Because I'm walking through this beautiful thing, but my eyes are just on like my food bar. You know, like I gotta eat food soon or something like that. And this game does a really good job of balancing that. But that's kind of because when I die, I usually die really quickly, kind of out of the blue. So it's kind of a skill level thing. Because earlier levels, you don't really have to worry about them winding down. The tutorial's not super clear on a lot. It does a good job, but I played a lot of games before I realized how to interact with certain objects or what the point of certain objects was. So there's even some exploration in just how to play the game, which may or may not be a good thing depending upon what you like. So yeah, I mean, it's great. It's got the pixel art, which I love. It's got, I think, probably my favorite soundtrack on any game on this list. For some reason, I really, really like the main music. Flavor-wise, the game's super spot on. Like, I love the panoply of different explorers you can choose to play from. It's really just a great slice of history and fiction. It's cool to see how they're represented in the game. And they all play differently to suit different playstyles, so a great roguelike. It's competing with a lot of other roguelikes for my time, so I don't know if I'll ever dedicate enough of my time to it to be good enough to beat it. I'd certainly like to, so hopefully that'll happen. Number 6. Axiom Verge is a game I'm pretty sure it came out early 2015. I certainly didn't play it until late 2015 when I got it off a Steam sale, and now I see why it made such a really big, if a little brief, splash in the news. People were saying it's the best Metroid game to come out not on a Nintendo console or platform, and that's probably true. I'm not a big Metroidvania consumer. I definitely like the genre. Cave Story Plus is one of my favorite games, one of my favorite platforming games. But this game's great for several reasons. So, in a Metroidvania, to me, what makes it enjoyable and playable is in Metroidvania, you spend a lot of time kind of just wandering. Like, you'll beat a boss, and you're like, now what? Now where do I go? I probably theoretically got some new power. Do I recall where to go for that? And is the place I recall actually progress or not? So, you spend a lot of time just wandering all over the map, and Axiom Verge does a fantastic job of making that interesting, because the game is just stuffed to the gills with little, secret optional things. Like, I haven't watched any speedruns of this game, but I'd love to see which optional things are deemed necessary or deemed worth the time it takes to get them, because certain weapons are obviously, certain bosses have weapons that are really, really strong against them. Like, one of the bosses, I remember I beat him because I had a gun that shot bullets that traveled horizontally but spat out little explosions off the side as it went, and that made this one boss really easy because I could just crouch and basically be invincible to him and shoot and have the little spit out things hit his underside and deal all my damage. But you don't have to get that gun. Like, very few weapons in the game, possibly all of them except for the first, you don't have to acquire. You could, I could be wrong about this, but for the most part, you could get through the entire game with like one gun. And the game has more than 10 different guns. Like, there's like 20 or something. I don't know. I only got like 12 or 13, but there's a lot of guns. And there's a lot of secrets. There's actually these things in the game called there's secret worlds you can get into, and they're randomly generated from game to game, so you don't know where they are. And there's that weird scanning system where you can get codes. So the game is kind of short if you're just trying to go beat all the bosses, hit all the marks, and get to the end of the game. But it's got a lot of depth to it, and I really, really appreciate that, because I'm not someone who's going to go and get through all that depth, but it's nice just to have. Like, as I wander around, I can actually feel like rewarded and still make progress, even if I'm not technically progressing. The only thing my only little complaint I might have had about the game is the ending. I was expecting more of like a choice or something, because the game has a couple of moments where you can kind of choose to do or not do a thing. It's almost Dark Souls 1 like, where you have Kingseeker, Frampt, and whatever the other one's name is. There's something like that going on, and I thought it's going to be like almost like the final boss in Dark Souls 1, where you can choose two different endings, neither of which necessarily is explicitly good or bad. It's kind of just choose one based off of what you think. And that didn't happen. It's certainly possible I missed something that did not cause that to happen, but I played through the end a couple times, making what I thought were different decisions, and it played out the same way both times. So that was a little disappointing, but it didn't mar the experience at all. It's still a pretty cool story. It's a really cool, creative, imaginative, and great-looking world. So Axiom Verge, definitely worth the time and money if you're a fan of Metroidvanias. Number 5, Envoy. This game I picked up fairly recently, and it's actually funny, because if I hadn't, Curious Expedition might have been higher on the list, but Convoy kind of eked it out, because this isn't the reason I like Convoy, but the reason Convoy kind of beat Curious Expedition is because I'm a little baby and Convoy is easier. Convoy has a difficulty you can choose, like easy, medium, or hard, so you can scale it to what you feel like playing. Because both games scratch very similar itches, where they're roguelikes, they're single sitting session based, and you get to wander around an open world and explore and encounter different things and react to them. Gameplay-wise, they are both very different, where Curious Expedition is a lot more about resource management and kind of choosing how best to interact with things. Convoy is a lot more combat-oriented. So Convoy is like FTL in that combat is real-time, but you can pause the game at any time to issue commands to your little units, and then unpause them and they'll play them out for you. The setting for Convoy it's basically Borderlands. It's like a Mad Max alien planet where you're driving around in a convoy of vehicles, acquiring more vehicles, acquiring different kinds of alien gear to equip to your vehicles, and it's all about managing your your gas, and as you're trying to acquire bits to repair your ship. The game is very RNG heavy, but on the other hand, in terms of what you encounter, but on the other hand, I don't know that it matters, because a lot of the encounters are simply there for fun. Like, a good example is you can come across a radio tower that's broadcasting GNU Terry Pratchett, which is a fantastic Terry Pratchett reference. And you have the option to destroy the tower, or not destroy the tower. And, well, the first random number generation is whether or not that event even, if you find it, and if it is even spawned on the map. The second random number generation is, destroying it. It's completely random if it's good or not. I've destroyed it and I've gotten reward, and I've destroyed it and I've gotten punished by losing resources or taking damage or whatever. So it's not like FTL, where, if I recall correctly, a specific event is the same every time you encounter it. Like, if you have item A and you interact with event A, then outcome A or B will happen. So that can be a little frustrating, but like I said, none of the things are super significant. Granted, if you're playing on the hardest difficulty, which I haven't tried, I imagine the RNG plays a much bigger role. Like, if things don't go well, you can be screwed. But on the more accommodating difficulties, it's just good casual fun, and I really like how they handled the world. Like, it's just really cool to fight like a big bad bandit boss with your hovercraft firing laser beams, kind of stuff. So, really cool game. It sucked way more hours than I thought it would. Like, I was like, I'm gonna do a video on this. Oh, it's been 10 hours. I've just played a bunch of games. And I think the reason for that is because it's a roguelite, where as you do different things in the game, you can unlock different sorts of things to start with. Because when you start a convoy, you choose the main convoy vehicle, which is a different set of equipment and stats, and you choose the 2 starting escort vehicles. And you can unlock a bunch of different convoy vehicles and a bunch of different escort vehicles, so I spent a lot of time just trying to get those unlocked. Number 4. Dungeon of the Endless. This game is it the last roguelite in this list? I'd say yes. More on that later. So, Dungeon of the Endless, while I've probably spent... I guess I've spent as much time, or I've probably spent more time playing Dungeon of the Endless than I have Convoy or Curious Expedition. It feels like less because Dungeon of the Endless is a lot harder to play in one sitting. Whereas like a Convoy or Expedition can take an hour. Like I think Convoy's like a little over an hour. Expedition, because I die, is less than an hour. Dungeon of the Endless is a good 3 hours per run. And the only difficulty settings it has are easy and very easy, and I've only beaten it on very easy, and I haven't even gotten close on easy. But the reason this game is so high on the list is just watch the trailer for it and watch it try to describe itself. It's a very hard game to describe because it has elements of so many different genres. It has like dungeon crawler, it has tower defense, it has RPG, it has resource management, it has just so much stuff, and that's kind of what makes it fun because it's a very, very unique game. Like I haven't played really anything else like it, and it takes place in the Endless universe. Because this company they made Dungeon of the Endless, they make Endless Legend, they make Endless Space. I think there might be one more that they make, but all of these kind of have the same feel to them, where it's almost like what I like about old Star Wars, where it's like fantasy in space. Because like Endless Legend, you can have like ogres wielding light laser spears, or like robots wielding crossbows, that kind of stuff. And Dungeon of the Endless doesn't have quite as much of that fantasy. Like a lot of the enemies you fight look pretty fantastical, like lizardmen wearing armor. And you have like the people you can have in your team can be like wearing powered armor but wielding swords, or they can be like a Han Solo guy, like a guy in a vest with a blaster. So I think just being in that world's really cool. It's got awesome pixel art, and it's very exploration heavy. Each level is procedurally generated, so it's very different, unique each time you play it. My favorite part, the thing that adds the most replay value to me though, is trying out different team compositions. Because there's a huge cast of different heroes that eventually you can unlock them, and they're pretty easy to unlock. But it's gotta be like 20 heroes by now. I don't know, they keep adding more. It's probably over 20. And you only choose 2 to start with on the vanilla playthrough. There's a lot of different play styles, different game types, and so on. The one that's typical, you start with 2 heroes and you can acquire up to 2 more. And so it's really interesting to try and just figure out like how you want to do that, because there's a bunch of different roles to fill. So choosing those 2 guys, like do you min-max, have them specialize in 2 roles? Do you have them a little more general and hope to pick up somebody else and differently? And that's really cool because each of the characters is not just like a stat number for you. They are actually pretty realized characters. Like they have little quips and dialogue. They're very flavorful in how they play. The game's just surprisingly immersive. I think that's important for all these roguelikes on this list, is the worlds feel more than just a repetitive trek down a hall. I mean, that's like the extreme worst case scenario. These games all feel like they're randomly generated, sure, but everything, it all fits together and makes sense. And I don't know, Dungeon of the Endless, like I said, watch the trailer, because it's hard to describe, but favorite roguelite of 2015, although it came out in 2014. Number 3, Arem Mellow. This game is gorgeous. It's a very beautiful looking game, and probably the best representation of a board game in video game form. Like any turn-based game you could say is board game-like. Like Civilizations you could say is board game-like. The reason I really say it for Arem Mellow though is because, with very slight exception, you could make a physical Arem Mellow board game. I know there is a physical Civilizations board game, but it is different. It plays differently than Civilizations. Like Arem Mellow, you could practically, literally have a board game version of it, and that's really, really cool. It combines card elements with some like RPG elements. Well, it's not exploration per se, but because your quests are randomly generated, it feels a bit more kind of like you're exploring this board that's randomly built each time. As a kid, I was a huge fan of the Redwall books, and so this game, in many ways, feels like you're playing around in that world. Because if you haven't watched my videos, it's a game where you play as basically warrior animals in a medieval setting, and magic's the thing. So it's a typical fantasy setting, and you play as animals. There's 5 different clans: the Bear Clan, the Rat Clan, the Wolf Clan, the Rabbit Clan, and the Bandit Clan. And the Bandit Clan has in it like a fox, an otter, a badger, and another rabbit? I'm forgetting. But each of those guys plays very differently. I think there may be some slight balancing issues with it, but there's 4 different ways to win the game. So choosing your champion, and choosing a win style for that champion can create a massive variety of ways to play the game. Certain champions are more better than others at certain win conditions, but they all have like more than one option still. So it's highly replayable. The development is going really, really well on it. The online community is still pretty strong, actually, if you want to try and find games. A single game right now against bots takes like 20 minutes, and it's really fun. So it's just a game that it's in some ways it's replaced The Binding of Isaac for me, because The Binding of Isaac used to be the game I would do where, like, if I was home for the holidays and I was bored, I just played Binding of Isaac because I could pick up and play, drop in, drop out whenever I wanted to. And this game's kind of replaced that. Partly because it's newer, partly because it's different, but mostly just because it's really fun. I mean, it scratches a different itch. I can't straight up compare it to Binding of Isaac, but if you like board games, I would definitely recommend this game. Doubly so if you have a friend to play with. Number 2, Westeros. This game is so high on the list because it is a game that exists that I didn't even know I wanted to exist until I played it. So it's a pixel art western, which is, you know, right up my alley. I love westerns. I love pixel art, obviously. And I think it's the first game I played. I've played a few games that do something since, but it's the first game I played where it's very short. Like you can beat it in an hour, but it's highly replayable because the decisions you make are drastically different. Unlike games I've since played, Westeros does this while being an open world. So it's like what I want Skyrim to be. But Skyrim's too long for me to want to actually experience Skyrim this way. So this game, it plays a lot like a Zelda game, except instead of Link, you're a cowboy with guns, although you can unlock other characters to play. Other characters don't really change your playstyle significantly. They do a little bit, but for the most part, it's really interesting to respond to different quests in different ways to see how it shapes the world. Like, one way, it'll blow up a dam and create a river. Another way, you'll cause a war between the natives and the military. Another way, you'll unclear the train tracks and the train will start coming to town and bring new things around. So, it's really... I love having the freedom to make drastic decisions because if I make a drastic decision in a video game, and I think it's actually a decision that will make a difference, which is rare to find in video games, I will burn with curiosity as to what the other decision would be. And with a short hour-long game, you can mess around and not feel like you're wasting time, because you can go back and just try a different decision. It can get a little tricky because certain things require you to very precisely make the right decisions and perform in the right way. Like a good example would be fighting off something while protecting an NPC can be a little hard sometimes, but if that NPC lives, you know, it's very important because certain things can happen or not happen based off of that NPC's being alive. But a great game, like, just the exploration of how things can play out it's huge. It's more replayable than any game, I think, any non-randomly generated game ever, because it's the same every time. It's just completely based off your decisions. There's a lot of really cool Easter eggs in it. I am so impressed by this game on so many ways. Definitely gonna keep my eye on this development studio to see what they do next. Number 1! The Magic Circle. The Magic Circle is so awesome, because in some ways, it's almost like Frog Fractions 2. It's definitely not Frog Fractions 2, but it breaks the fourth wall, it plays with your expectations, it genre jumps, it does some really, really cool stuff, on top of having some great voice acting, and just being a really, like, it's a well-built game about building a game. Like, the Magic Circle is the perfect, appropriate name for this game. I don't want to talk about it too much without spoiling things, but like the main game has you kind of running around in an open world, and you can alter aspects of the game itself. Like, let's say you're attacked by a little monster, you can shoot him with your power glove, and it'll bring up his stats, like monster name, monster's enemies, monster's allies, and you're like, okay, the hero is the monster's enemy, I'm gonna take that out and put it up here under allies. Now the monster is your friend, and he'll follow you around and help you out. So a lot of the puzzles on this game involve trying to figure out what aspects of what things to tweak to progress. Because certain monsters will be like glitched, so you can't edit certain aspects of them. So just like getting by a guy can be hard. Like, sometimes it's a puzzle in that you have to like figure out how to beat him. Sometimes it's just like, okay, I gotta run around, convert enough monsters to my side, and just swarm him and beat him that way. So, the gameplay itself is very cool. It's got good puzzles. I really like the world, or two worlds, that it kind of jumps around in between, and the ongoing discussion between like the NPCs and you is really, really, really entertaining. And that last monologue, you'll know what I'm talking about. That last monologue, ooh, it gave me chills. A little cheesy that it gave me chills, because it's not subtle, but it's really, really good. And I actually ended up buying, I think, like 3 or 4 copies of the Magic Circle this Steam sale to give out to different people, because I think everybody should play this game. Anybody who's played video games, anyway. Anybody who likes video games should probably play the Magic Circle. The exceptions to that being, you know, like, casual gamers, I guess. Like, casual gamers who only play, like, FPSs or only play FIFA or whatever, they're not gonna like this game. But people who like RPGs, I guess, that's a more accurate way to put it. People who like RPGs should play the Magic Circle. The Magic Circle is not an RPG, but it's most similar to an RPG puzzler, I guess. So, unfortunately, I can't talk that much more about it, because it's the story is what makes it so tight, and I don't want to spoil the story, but it's absolutely worth checking out, guys. So yeah, these were all my favorite experiences from 2015. I know not all of them, all these games are 2015, but I'm just the ones that I played. My favorite things that I did. I think, conveniently, I actually have videos for each of these games to some extent. So, thank you guys for watching. Definitely let me know if there's some other games that I played that should be on the list, or games I didn't play at all this year. Like, I know Ori and the Blind Forest, there are games I got for Christmas. Like, the Darkest Dungeon is another example. That I'm still playing now. So they couldn't make my list because I hadn't played them. But let me know other games, you know, that you wish I had played, and I'll play them in 2016. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much for making 2015 such a great year, and I will see you guys in 2016. Signature catchphrase.